Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Critchlow, and this is my Recipe for Cultural Identity unit plan. This unit is intended for high school. It lasts about 6 weeks, and the enduring theme is cultural identity. The essential questions this unit incorporates is what are the ways artists can incorporate cultural identity in their art? How do artists create realistic texture in their work? Why has food been a popular theme throughout art history? And how can food in art express cultural identity? Students will reflect on historical and contemporary artists that represent both texture and cultural identity in artworks. Students will create a digital collage and cultural identity map that shows self-awareness in the theme of cultural identity. And students will develop skills in colored pencil blending, shading basic forms, and intentional mark making to create realistic implied texture in a final work of art. My first lesson is called Cultural Identity Map and Collage. Students will examine the works of Kenyan contemporary collage artist Wingechi Mutu. Students will complete a cultural identity map exploring self-awareness of their own culture, including language, family, fashion, environment, food, celebrations, hobbies, art, and music. And then the final part of lesson 1, students will create a digital collage with either images found on the internet or personal photographs as a visual representation of their cultural identity. Using this website found in my references, the students can create these awesome collages where they can make their photographs into any kind of shape that they want. Students will show an understanding of today's technology, use creative process to enhance the artistic product. They will identify the use of principles of design, balance, contrast, variety, rhythm, emphasis, pattern, and unity in their works of art. They will meet a deadline, and they will create a digital self-collage that shows awareness in the theme of cultural identity, as well as creating their cultural identity map in writing. This is the assessment for lesson 1. I have a rubric including cultural identity imagery, principles of design, reflection, and 21st century skills. My second lesson is focused on form, texture, and colored pencil blending. In this lesson, students will watch a video on implied and actual texture and examine artwork by the contemporary artist Ebony Patterson. Students will choose an artwork by Ebony Patterson that they research themselves and use the Feldman critique method to describe, analyze, interpret, and judge in small groups. And then finally, students will practice colored pencil blending techniques, shading basic forms, and intentional mark making to create texture in their sketchbooks. So here are some of my teacher examples for these. The first one is 6 different techniques in colored pencil blending. The second one is step-by-step we learn how to shade these basic forms. And third, we experiment with graphite and colored pencil to create different textures. This assessment is concluded with a Canvas quiz. I made a Canvas quiz that's about 10 questions. This focuses on implied texture, real texture, how artists use texture, how artists can incorporate texture to make their cultural identity more prominent in their artwork. In lesson 3, this is the big lesson, food in art. It takes about 4 weeks. These are the lesson objectives. So in this lesson, we start with a bite-sized history of food and art, which is created by Google, and it is awesome. I have the link here. This talks about the history of food throughout the arts, and as an essay topic, students are to write a short essay on Canvas discussions. What did food say about cultural identity through art history, and what can food in art say about cultural identity today? Talking about food that has been in the past, artworks and food now, how we see it in Instagram pages and all over social media. These are the two artists that I chose to compare and contrast. We have a Dutch contemporary artist, Tijalf Sparne, and Valerie Jung Estabrook. The students will get this handout, and they use small groups to compare and contrast the two artworks. Finally, students will create a still life that depicts food that they associate with their own cultural identity. They use skills that they have practiced, including all of those colored blending techniques, the shading the forms, creating realistic texture, and these are two of my examples here. One is a German pretzel, and the other is an arepa. At the end of this lesson, I do this really awesome peer review where we play music in the class. The students walk around the classroom as in to look at their peers' artwork in a gallery walk. And when the music stops, the students find the closest project to sit down at, kind of like musical chairs. And on a post-it note, they TAG, tell the artist something they like, ask a question, and give a suggestion on how to make it better. We have practiced this at the end of every unit, so they're very familiar with it. It's an excellent strategy to get your students to give feedback to each other and also take a look at what their other peers are doing. And then finally, they have some time to make artist statements and revise their own work before they turn it in. Their artist statement should focus on how their artwork, the food in their artwork represents their own cultural identity. This is the final assessment for that lesson. It is a 100-point project graded on a rubric. Here are the learning standards that I used. I teach in Orange County, Florida. And here are my references. Thank you so much for listening.